Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Jalen Jones. North Carolina lawmakers just got a reality check on the long road to recovery in the western part of the state. It has been 18 months since Hurricane Helene devastated mountain communities, and while state officials report being ahead of schedule compared to previous disasters, the numbers tell a different story. Only 30 homes have been fully rebuilt out of more than 3,700 still in the pipeline. In a conversation on our WRAL YouTube page, State Government reporter Doran breaks down the tension inside the legislature as local representatives push for speed while state agencies navigate the red tape of federal funding and rising construction costs. Here's that conversation. We're going out west to the western part of the state. We're talking about Helene recovery, am I right?
That's right, Jalen. Yeah, there was a big hearing that I just got back from at the legislature a couple hours ago talking about this. And this is far from the first hearing that we've been to. I've sat through hours of these things because state officials want to know that the money that we're spending is being spent wisely, but at the same time that work is also happening fast. Because as people know, people might remember or not, you can go look it up. We've done documentaries about this at WRAL after storms like Florence, like Matthew back a decade ago. We're talking 2016, 2018. I mean, it took years to get people's homes rebuilt. In fact, I just checked with the state. There's still about 100 people from those storms in 2016 and 2018 who are still in 2026 waiting for their homes to get rebuilt by the government.
10 years later, man, it's crazy.
Wild. And, you know, of course, there are plenty of complications. We can get into a little bit of that later. But, you know, we don't want to repeat all of those errors that happened after those previous storms. And so that's why the legislature is really taking a close look at the Helene issues and making sure that, hey, you know, this did not go so great last time. What are we doing to stay on top of this, make sure that things are going better?
Well, I will say, let's start off here first positive. Shout out to the legislature for learning from previous mistakes and trying to keep things on track. You know, that's their job. That's to make sure that the money's being spent well, and also learning from previous mistakes, especially with previous storms. I think that's just so important as we move forward. And unfortunately, hurricanes are becoming more of a common occurrence as with severe weather and things like that.
Not just more common, but stronger too. There's been scientific studies that show over the last seveol decades, you know, the average like wind speed, amount of rain, all of that, the way you measure strength of hurricane is going up and up and up.
It is. And unfortunately, the state is going to have to start saving more money in preparation for these storms as well. So let's dig into this hearing. What did you find out?
Well, I think the top line news is that, okay, Hurricane Helene happened 18 months ago now, and the state has rebuilt or finished the work on 30 homes. They have about 3,700 left to go.
Okay.
Still in the pipeline. So they're working on about 140 at the moment.
Okay.
However, that might not seem like very good. You know, it's been 18 months. We've only done 30 of these rebuilds, but actually they went back, they looked at previous storms in North Carolina, but also in Florida, in Texas, in Louisiana, in South Carolina, all these states that, you know, like us, get hit by hurricanes all the time. And in all of those previous cases, at the same 18th month mark, 0 homes rebuilt.
Okay.
In those other states or here in North Carolina after previous storms. So even though, yes, it is a very small number, we're actually way ahead of schedule compared to how this process normally goes. And so what we saw today was some of Governor Stein's top Helene folks were trying to assure the legislature that, hey, you know, we're on top of this.
Yeah.
We are moving quick. We have gotten creative to try to cut through some red tape, to try to get some stuff going. And, you know, if this had been a few years ago in a different storm, or if we were living in any other state right now, you wouldn't see any work having been done. And here we are. We can show you 30 families that we've gotten back in their homes already.
Literally. Absolutely. Well, first of all, this is the most type of report I've ever seen. Like, hey, we're much farther, but we would like it to be faster. And
right.
I think that's like almost what's the public perception going to be when these numbers get out? Like, hey, in comparison, we're doing really good, but we would like to move faster. And building a home takes time. Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll hear more about the political stakes for Governor Josh Stein and the impact these recovery efforts could have on the upcoming 2026 midterm. Welcome back to the WRAL Daily Download. We'll be hearing from WRAL State Government reporter Will Doran about what he learned from Helene hearing with updates on recovery.
Yes. And it's incredibly complicated because it's not just building the home. I mean, that's basically the easy part here.
Uh-huh.
You've got to, one, wait for the federal government to send you the money, which we know that has been a little bit slower recently with Helene. And then you got to go and you got to appraise the land and the home that you're working on. And then once you've kind of figured out, okay, this is, is this a $200,000 house or an $800,000 house? Then you got to put it out to bid to find your subcontractors. So you got to get the appraisal, you got to get the contractors coming in, and then you got to do the safety inspection. And then you got to find somewhere to put the family. And I mean, this could be 3, 4, 5, 6 months that you're going to have to put people up somewhere. And so, if they have kids, are you going to try to keep them in the same school district? If it's, an elderly person with medical issues,
Yes.
and especially in rural parts of Western North Carolina, there's not hotels everywhere. If you're near Asheville, sure, you can find some hotels. But if you're, way out, down by Georgia or up kind of on the Virginia line, it can be tough. So there's all of these things that you have to figure out, just kind of like the bureaucratic red tape of it before you even start swinging any hammers. And so that and that is why those first 18 months you usually don't see any construction, because they're just figuring out okay, how do we even tackle this?
How do we attack this?
Right.
Yeah.
And so they've gotten some of the work started. They're starting to do some more. But it's tricky because you have all of these things happening. And then, you also have the money issues. Like I said, we have gotten money from the federal government, but of course it's been slow to trickle in. The state legislature has approved some money, but it hasn't been quite as much as people want to hear. And we heard some frustrations today from lawmakers out in Western North Carolina. One of them, Carl Gillespie, he's from Macon County, Republican from out there. He said, I'm kind of offended by this presentation that y'all gave, because it had one of the slides they had was, these the 30 or so families. There was a bunch of pictures of them smiling and, standing in their new house and next to the, the big sign that said welcome home that the state had put up for them. And he said, this is, you've done 30 people. We have 3,700 families waiting on this. You're going to just kind of, he's like, I've got to go home to my constituents who are still mad and are still waiting, living in their, either living in a damaged home or not able to go back to their home at all. And, y'all are going to come here and tell us that we should be glad that you've done 30 homes.
I understand his point of view with that as well. Oh, man. So I do have a couple questions with that, but also I do want to talk about 2 more caveats with terms of constructing. The price of materials have gone up significantly since the hurricane. And also, number 2, because we're recording this in April 2026, gas prices, man, especially diesel to power up these machines to build homes.
Right.
Diesel's $5 a gallon right now as well. So these budgets are having to be constantly readjusted. And then we're asking the federal government for more money to offset these inflation things as well. What do you have?
Well, if you've got a bulldozer, if you're trying to demo a house or 3,000 houses and you've got bulldozers running, for a whole day, it's a lot more expensive to do that than it was a month ago or 2 months ago. And that is actually something they talked about today. They said, look, we've gotten this, I think it was $1.4 billion from the feds. The state has pitched in another around $120 million. They're like, but we have this, this specialty software that every month tracks inflation in construction materials. And so we can see these trends of, this type of material is costing this next month, or this other type of material is going to cost this next month. And so they can go in and watch that and track it. But you're right. I mean, the longer it takes, the more inflation is going to hit. It's not like inflation is going away anytime soon. And so, that is also, again, part of the rush to get things done quickly. But you were exactly right to point out that kind of inherent pressure that you pointed out. Like, on one hand, you have the legislature saying, we need you to do this even faster than the kind of record-setting speed you've already been doing it at. And on the other hand, they're saying, we need you to do this efficiently, and we need to make sure that you're spending the money wisely and you're not wasting any money. And that's tough. I mean, anyone who's ever been in a business, especially where you're dealing with, contractors and subcontractors and, all of, massive amounts of money, massive amounts of people involved, speed and care are often kind of mutually exclusive.
Yes.
And so that's going to be a really fine line for them to try to walk as they get this done, to be able to assure not only the state legislature but the feds too, because FEMA has its own rules for spending money, that hey, we're doing everything correctly that we should be doing with this money, but also at the same time actually getting the work done and helping the people who need the help.
Absolutely. And I think everybody in the room wants to get these homes built as fast as possible, efficiently as possible, also safe, because you got to get inspections. I think everybody wants that to happen, but the pressure of trying to look good, because there's an actual political aspect to this.
Oh, for sure.
As well, trying to make sure and put your stamp of approval on a successful project. Also, this is a big midterm, so everybody has to go back to their constituents at home and trying to sell themselves again to get voted back again. So
yeah, every single state lawmaker is up for re-election this year, and actually a few of them out in Western North Carolina, a couple of the guys who are on this committee today, just lost their primaries last month because, constituents weren't happy with what they're seeing from Raleigh, wanted a change in leadership.
And that's their right as a citizen voting as well. That's why it's so important to vote and have your voice heard as well with this as well. Okay, so besides this overall general update of Helene recovery, what else should people take with this as we wrap up?
Well, it's definitely, people watching, making sure that everything's going well. We have these meetings basically monthly, it feels like, or maybe every other month, but it's a big issue. You mentioned the midterms. Roy Cooper, running for the Senate seat, former governor here, one of his, frankly, biggest, scandals when he was governor was that slow pace of recovery after Florence, after Matthew. And so, obviously our current governor, Josh Stein, knows that was something that people really hit Cooper with, was and probably still remains a political liability of Cooper's as he, runs for Senate. Stein wants to avoid similar things. He's obviously putting pressure on his own people to get this done quickly.
That was WRAL State Government reporter Will Doran. For all of our Helene coverage, go to the NC Capital section of WRAL.com. I'm Jalen Jones, and thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and for making us a part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news in addition to our YouTube channel and this podcast is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email with Triangle news, events, and headlines to help you get ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.